Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we crack open those dense sources, pull out the really key insights, and basically give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
Yeah,
Today, we're plunging into one of life's most dynamic stages, and let's be honest, often pretty misunderstood.
Huh.
Adolescence.
Definitely.
Our main source for this deep dive is a fantastic book, Working with Adolescents,
Yep.
by Julie Ann Laser. It's really known for its incredibly comprehensive and, well, this multifaceted ecological perspective.
That's exactly what our mission is today for you listening. We're going to try and unpack the many different worlds a young person lives in. These contexts, they can either help or sometimes hinder their journey towards finding their identity and their overall well-being.
Right.
But really digging into the risk factors and also the protective factors within these worlds, we can start to see clues, I think, for how best to support them when things get tough.
Yeah, get ready, because you are going to hear some genuinely surprising facts, I think, and gain insights that might just make you rethink what you thought you knew about what really shapes a teenager. This isn't just, surface level stuff. We are going deep into the forces that mold them.
Okay.
Okay, so let's unpack this ecological perspective first. When we think about a teenager, it's sort of easy to just see them as, an individual doing their own thing. But this approach, it kind of flips that, right?
It really does. It says they're not isolated. They're
Right.
deeply embedded within all these different interconnected systems.
Like those Russian nesting dolls.
That's a perfect analogy, yeah. Each layer influencing the next. And a really foundational way to grasp these layers is based on what's often called an ecological model. Bronfenbrenner's model, usually. It helps us map out their whole universe, starting really close in.
Okay.
We call this the microsystem.
So the microsystem, that's like the places they actually touch and interact with every single day. Their immediate world.
Exactly. Think face-to-face settings, home, school, maybe the neighborhood playground, their closest friends, perhaps their church or mosque. And what's absolutely crucial here is the reciprocal interplay.
Reciprocal interplay, meaning
Meaning it's not just the place affecting them. They affect the place too and the people in it. It goes both ways. And of course, as kids grow, they're constantly navigating and being shaped by multiple microsystems, not just one.
okay, that makes sense. So if the microsystem is what they're directly in, what happens when those different parts, like home and school, start interacting with each other?
That's where the mesosystem comes in. This is all about the connections between two or more of those microsystems.
Okay,
So imagine parents and teachers sitting down together, maybe with a student right there, talking about grades.
right.
That interaction, it links home and school. When the student sees that link, they often feel, well, more secure, more supported,
Yeah.
and definitely more accountable, especially if they've maybe tried to, play one off against the other before.
Triangulate them, yeah.
Exactly. Or think about how a teen makes friends in their neighborhood versus at school. Those might be really different dynamics. Understanding those differences can actually help improve their overall social skills, their social functioning.
That makes so much sense. It's like the threads connecting the different bubbles of their life. But what about things that are a bit further out? Influences they aren't directly part of, but still feel the effects of.
Right. That takes us to the next layer out, the exosystem. These are settings that indirectly influence the adolescent. The teen isn't an active participant there, but what happens there kind of ripples out.
Okay, like what?
Well, take the example of Shahir. Maybe the local mayor suddenly decrees no more soccer in the park. Shahir loves soccer, plays there every day. He wasn't in the mayor's meeting, but that decision directly impacts him. Or think bigger, like broader societal attitudes after something like 9/11. Maybe there's increased fear or bias towards people from certain backgrounds. Shahir might feel that, even if he's not directly involved in the political discourse causing it.
Wow.
So for someone working with Shahir, like a practitioner, assessing how welcoming the community really is for, say, refugee families involves looking beyond just his direct interactions. It means looking at these exosystem factors and that wider view. It just opens up way more options for helping, for intervention.
Okay, so mayor's office, community attitudes, that's a big jump from their immediate friends or family. What's the absolute biggest layer then, the outermost one?
That would be the macro system. This is the big one. It encompasses the broader cultural blueprints, societal values, policy patterns. Basically, the societal context that shapes all the other systems inside it.
So like cultural norms.
Exactly. Things like compulsory heterosexuality, that assumption that everyone is or should be straight, or pervasive issues like homophobia, transphobia. These create real risks for queer youth. They aren't just individual opinions. They're woven into the fabric of society, affecting everything from laws to everyday interactions.
Gotcha. And you mentioned one more time, how does time fit into this whole model?
Right. Absolutely crucial. That's the chrono system. Chrono, meaning time. It highlights the profound effect of time itself. This includes big historical events.
Like a war.
Precisely. Think of the Lost Boys of Sudan.
Huh.
Years of civil war completely shaped their development. But it's also about personal life experiences unfolding over time. Life transitions, stresses.
Okay.
Remember Alfreda and George? Their family was separated for 4 years. They couldn't sell their house in Detroit. George's parents got sick. These weren't just single events. They were circumstances evolving over years, deeply affecting the family's well-being and, of course, their kids' development.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. This whole layered understanding, it just completely changes how you look at why teens do what they do, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You can't just point to one thing and say, that's the reason. It moves us way beyond those simple kind of surface level explanations. It gives you a much richer, more complex picture.
Exactly. A truly ecological view.
So now that we've kind of mapped out this intricate universe that adolescents live in, let's zoom back in on the individual. What about the changes happening inside them? Those developmental stages that seem, well, normal, but often pretty tumultuous.
Yeah, let's start with the physical side. Physically, adolescence is really marked by what's called an asynchronous growth spurt.
Asynchronous, meaning?
Meaning different body parts grow at different rates.
Yeah.
So you get that classic gangly appearance, big feet, long limbs that seem kind of out of proportion for a bit.
Awkward phase, right.
Exactly. And this rapid, uneven growth, it can also cause temporary uncoordination. Suddenly tripping over their own feet becomes a thing, and it can be a real source of embarrassment, especially for younger teens.
Oh.
I remember a story about a client whose dad used to joke about her size 10 shoes. They probably thought it was funny. But for her, during that vulnerable time, it just amplified her shame.
Oof, yeah, that hurts.
And this increased physical strength and energy, combined with a brain that's still, maturing, especially the parts responsible for judgment. This can lead to feelings of omnipotence, like they're almost invulnerable.
So they genuinely feel like bad stuff won't happen to them, even if they're, like, jumping off a roof or something.
Pretty much. It's part of why reckless behavior and risk-taking can be so common then. They feel like the usual rules of cause and effect, consequences, they apply to other people, maybe, but not really to them.
Wow. Okay, so that's physical. What about identity? That seems like a huge one for teenagers.
Oh, absolutely massive. Identity development is central. Psychologists like James Marcia talk about different identity statuses. One common one is identity diffusion.
Diffusion.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Peter Pan youth. They haven't really explored different possibilities for their future. Haven't really committed to a path yet, whether that's a career goal or their core beliefs and values. They can feel a bit adrift, rudderless.
And what's the ideal outcome there, the goal?
Well, the optimal outcome is usually seen as identity achievement. This is where a young person has actively explored different options for work, for their values, and then they've made meaningful commitments. They've thought about it, wrestled with it, and chosen a direction. They've kind of found their footing.
Makes sense.
And beyond just general identity, we also see specific kinds, like racial identity development. For white teens, for instance, this might involve moving through stages, perhaps starting with certain attitudes, then maybe moving into what's called an immersion status, where they start to acknowledge unintentional racism, work to make changes, maybe seek out others with similar goals, and confront racism more directly. This whole process can ultimately help foster more genuine relationships with people of color.
Okay, and other identities too.
Definitely. Sexual orientation identity development is another major one. For queer youth, this often involves an active exploration of who they are sexually. And sadly, a really critical finding here is that if they lack trusted adults, lack support systems during this exploration, it significantly increases risks. Things like delinquency, substance use, running away, depression, even suicidal thoughts. Support is just vital.
That's heavy, yeah.
And then there's transgender identity development. Research here is still pretty minimal compared to other areas, unfortunately. But studies do suggest that an awareness, that feeling of being different from others in terms of gender, can emerge really early, sometimes as young as 7. It's also worth mentioning the historical controversy around the gender identity disorder, or GID diagnosis, which for a long time was required for people seeking surgical transition. That's evolved, but it's part of the history.
Right. Okay, so that's a huge amount to navigate physically and figuring out who you are. What about their emotional world? Is that shifting just as much?
Absolutely. Big shifts there, too, and often in different ways, depending on gender or at least how gender roles are perceived. For females, some influential research, like Carol Gilligan's work back in the day, talked about this phenomenon of girls potentially losing their voice.
Losing their voice.
Yeah, the idea was that some girls might start to repress their own knowledge, their assertiveness, to try and fit into that expectation of being the nice girl. This could lead to developing a kind of inauthentic self, which can make forming real, meaningful friendships harder.
Is that still seen as true?
Well, it's debated. Other researchers argue that actually modern females are often very verbal about their thoughts and feelings. You hear terms like Kindlen's alpha girls, who are described as excelling as leaders, very confident.
Yeah.
So it's likely complex and varies a lot.
Okay. And what about for adolescent boys? Similar emotional challenges?
Yes, but often expressed or maybe suppressed differently. Research suggests that adolescent males frequently feel pressure to hide their emotional side, the whole be a tough guy thing.
Right. Don't show weakness.
Exactly. Some researchers, like Gurian, have argued that males might need stronger family and community support, mentors perhaps, because sometimes they're allowed or even pushed to separate from the family system a bit too early, relying heavily on peers for emotional support, which might be, inadequate or sometimes even misinformed.
Interesting.
And Kindlen and Thompson linked issues of violence in some males to an inability to really understand their own emotional lives. It really underscores how crucial it is to provide better education and communication and empathy for all young men.
Wow. That gives us a powerful look inside the adolescent experience. Now let's shift back out a bit. Let's look at those specific environments where teens spend most of their time. The family, school, neighborhood. What helps them thrive there? The protective factors and what are the risks? Let's start with the family environment.
Okay. Well, within the family, adolescence often triggers what Peter Bloss has called a second separation individuation.
Second, what was the first?
The first was toddlerhood, learning to walk, becoming physically separate. The second one is more psychological. Young adolescents start to give up that childhood view of their parents as, all-knowing, perfect. They start taking more responsibility for their own choices, realizing these choices really will shape who they become.
And this often involves conflict, right? We hear about parent-teen conflict all the time.
It does. And here's a surprising finding for many people. Parent-adolescent conflict is actually considered normative.
Normative, meaning it's healthy even.
In many ways, yes. It's a normal part of development. It can be frequent, it can feel intense, especially in early and mid-adolescence. But typically, these conflicts happen within relationships that are fundamentally warm and involved.
Okay.
It's only a small percentage, maybe 5 to 10%, where you see a really dramatic breakdown in the parent-child relationship during these years. So a bit of conflict. That can actually be a sign of growth, of the teen pushing for independence.
That's reassuring, I think, for a lot of parents listening.
It can be. When we talk about family protective factors, things that help, key ones include parental knowledge, knowing where their teen is, who they're with, what they're doing and monitoring. Also, parental warmth, the parent's ability to handle conflict without withdrawing, and open communication.
And parenting style matters.
Hugely. Authoritative parenting, that balance of warmth, clear boundaries, and allowing independence within those boundaries is very protective. And a history of secure attachment from childhood helps too. On the flip side, family risk factors include things like parental mental health issues, severe poverty, abuse or neglect, obviously, and parental substance use.
Makes sense. Okay, what about the school environment? That's another huge chunk of their lives.
Absolutely. And in school, one of the most powerful protective factors is simply fostering a sense of belonging.
Belonging, like the theme song from Cheers, where everybody knows your name?
Exactly like that. When school staff, teachers, counselors, even administrators know students' names, ask about them if they're absent. Engage with them personally.
Right.
It helps young people feel seen, feel unique, and helps them build an authentic identity.
And activities.
Yes, participation in extracurricular activities is huge. Being on the swim team, like in one example, doesn't just provide skill development. It helps establish identity, I'm a swimmer, and offers positive peer support. And generally, opportunities for rewards, for feeling a sense of accomplishment at school, also hugely protective. In fact, doing well at school can sometimes buffer unhappiness or chaos at home. It can be a real refuge.
That's such a powerful idea, school as a refuge. But of course, school is also where really difficult things can happen. Bullying comes to mind immediately.
Yeah, bullying is a massive issue. And it's not trivial. It has lasting effects. It impacts self-esteem, friendships. It can lead to higher physical and mental distress, poor schoolwork, sleep problems, depression, feeling unsafe.
Stats are pretty grim, aren't they?
They are. Around 16.9% of students report being bullied. Over half of schools report witnessing bullying. And in the most extreme tragic cases, it's correlated with suicidal thoughts and sometimes aggressive behavior.
So what actually works? How do you bully-proof a school?
Well, effective strategies really require a whole school approach. Inclusion is key, meaning everyone, from the lunch staff to the principal, feels responsible for creating a safe climate. It needs ongoing programs, not just a one-off assembly. Teachers and parents need to be held accountable, no pretending it didn't happen, and educating parents who might, normalize violence or tell their kid to just hit back.
Yeah.
And crucially, student accountability. No special rules for privileged students like star athletes who might get away with things others wouldn't.
Right, consistency is key. Okay, moving outwards again. The neighborhood environment. How much does that play a role?
A significant role. Protective factors at the neighborhood level include things like collective efficacy.
Collective efficacy. What's that?
It's the community's shared belief that they can actually organize and act together for the common good, like neighbors trusting each other and being willing to intervene if they see kids skipping school or vandalizing property. Other protective things are social cohesion, low crime rates, having more affluent residents generally, and physical things like playgrounds, parks, community centers.
And the risks?
Risks are kind of the opposite. High crime rates, easy access to drugs or weapons, crowding, lots of people moving in and out all the time, high residential mobility, rundown or deteriorated properties, and a lack of that social cohesion or trust.
And you mentioned earlier, this isn't always tied directly to how much money someone makes, right? These factors can exist in different kinds of neighborhoods.
Exactly. It's not solely about income or education level.
Yeah.
Think about Max's case. He was a good student, doing well, his family moves, and suddenly he starts skipping school, quits the ski team. Turns out he and a friend got involved with some stuff happening near an abandoned house in this new neighborhood. It shows how these subtle neighborhood-level factors can exert this really significant, sometimes unseen pressure.
Wow. Okay, one more major context. Media influences. This feels like it's changed so much, even in just the last decade or two.
Oh, dramatically. Especially with interactive media, the internet, smartphones, they've really blurred the lines between microsystems, haven't they? And the effects are instantaneous.
How is that different from, say, watching TV back in the day?
Well, old non-interactive media like TV could function almost like a practice arena. A teen could watch behaviors, think about them, maybe imitate them in their head, but without immediate real-world risk. But now, you send that angry email, you post that revealing photo, you join that online group. The opportunity for risk-free rehearsal is just gone. The consequences can be immediate and widespread.
And teens form relationships with people online, or even celebrities.
Yes, they form what are called parasocial relationships with celebrities, influencers, fictional characters, and these can significantly shape their ideas about gender roles, their values, even their understanding of relationships and their sexual scripts. And it's really worth noting here the significant lack of representation for homosexual and transgender individuals in a lot of mainstream media. This often reinforces that idea of compulsory heterosexuality we talked about earlier.
And it feels like media and friends often have more sway than parents during adolescence.
Often, yes, their influence on perceptions can seem greater. But, and this is crucial, parents who remain approachable, who keep lines of communication open, can still be an incredibly valuable resource. They can help teens process what they're seeing and experiencing.
But the online world offers chances to explore identity too, right?
It does. Cyberspace provides unique opportunities for teens to try on different personas, explore different facets of themselves. But again, that lack of a safe rehearsal space means these explorations can carry real risks if they're not careful or if they encounter harmful influences. Joanne's case is a tragic illustration.
Remind us about Joanne.
She got internet access, started spending a lot of time online, became increasingly depressed. Her father eventually found printouts from websites detailing how to commit suicide. It's just a chilling reminder of how serious those online risks can be, especially when a young person is vulnerable and support systems aren't there or aren't aware.
That's incredibly sobering.
Yeah.
Okay, so weaving all this together, what does it mean when adolescents face really serious challenges? Things like substance abuse, risky sexual activity, or delinquency. How do all these systems and factors play into those situations? And importantly, how can interventions help?
Right. Let's take substance abuse. First, it's important to know that adolescents using drugs are a really diverse group. It's not monolithic, but about 10 to 15% do become addicted. And very often you see co-occurring issues.
Like what?
Things like delinquency, underlying mental health problems, maybe ADHD, bipolar disorder, conduct disorder, depression, anxiety, truancy from school, significant family problems. Sometimes the substance use actually makes the mental health issues worse. And sometimes teens start using substances to try and self-medicate symptoms before they even get a diagnosis or help.
So it's all tangled together.
Very much so. Effective interventions often need to address this complexity. Things like motivational interviewing can be really helpful. It focuses on empathy, helping the teen see the gap between where they are and where they want to be, and building their belief that they can change, supporting their self-efficacy. Another powerful approach is multisystemic therapy, or MST.
MST, what's that focus on?
MST looks at the whole ecological system. It works to improve family parenting skills, helps decrease the teen's association with negative peers, and actively build positive support systems around them in the family, school, and community. It tackles multiple systems at once.
Yeah, Jerry's case really highlighted that peer influence, didn't it? He felt lonely, started using marijuana, and that shifted him entirely out of the jock group into the stoner group, which then tanked his grades. It shows how one thing just cascades.
Exactly. Now, moving to sexual activity, the statistics might surprise some people. Nearly a third, 33% of ninth graders report having had sex. By age 18, it's over 70%.
Wow.
What's interesting is the correlation with how time is spent. Increased family time tends to be linked with less sexual activity, while more time spent with peers, especially peers who are already engaging in risky behaviors, tends to increase it.
And the nature of teen relationships seems different now, too.
Yes, we see trends like hooking up or friends with benefits. These are basically sexual encounters without the expectation of emotional commitment. They seem particularly common in some suburban areas, and things like cell phones and the internet definitely make arranging them easier. And another surprising finding, many teens engaging in, say, oral sex don't actually consider it having sex. They might still identify as virgins.
Which has implications for safe sex practices, I imagine.
Huge implications. Because that perceived invulnerability we talked about earlier, it really shows up here. Rates of sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, are alarmingly high among adolescents. About 26% of 14 to 19-year-old females have at least one STD. And overall, about 1 in 2 sexually active young people will contract an STD by the time they're 25.
1 in 2. That's staggering.
It is. And then there's the issue of teen parenting. Risk factors for becoming a parent during adolescence often include struggling in school, having low standardized test scores, a history of sexual abuse, substance abuse issues, and a pattern of acting out behaviors in childhood.
Yeah.
And again, neighborhood and peer risk factors add to that picture.
Beverly's case seemed to bundle so many of those risks together. Adopted, distant mom, substance use, actively seeking unprotected sex, sending explicit photos. It's a really stark picture of vulnerability.
It is. It shows how these risks can pile up. Finally, let's touch on delinquency. Key risk factors here often include a history of victimization, being abused or neglected themselves. This can lead to being overly sensitive to threats, maybe having impaired judgment in risky situations. Also, the lack of a consistent, stable father figure or constant changes in who is parenting can be a risk factor.
And peer influence again.
Absolutely. There's a strong contagion effect. Hanging out with more delinquent peers significantly increases the likelihood of a teen engaging in delinquency themselves. Conversely, having positive peer relationships is a major protective factor against delinquency.
And neighborhood matters here, too.
Yes, unsafe neighborhoods, high crime rates, visible signs of decay, they all contribute. And media exposure to violence is also often cited as a risk factor. There's even a developmental model suggesting delinquency often starts way back, maybe with inconsistent parenting, that erodes a child's basic trust.
So how do you intervene effectively with delinquency?
One useful approach is called contingency management. Here, the therapist or practitioner acts almost like a coach. They work with the teen and family to clearly define rules, specify consequences for breaking rules, but also define clear rewards for positive pro-social behavior. It's about fostering accountability in a structured way. And it's really important to distinguish this role, the mental health role focused on change, from the role of, say, correctional staff, which is more about control.
Charlie's case sounded incredibly complex. Severe neglect, domestic violence exposure, Animal cruelty, stealing, aggression, fire setting, no empathy, hiding, bedwetting, just layers upon layers of risk.
Exactly. It shows how severe and cumulative these risk factors can become, leading to really serious patterns of behavior.
Okay, we've explored so many challenges and risks. It feels crucial now to pivot to the positive side. Let's talk about resilience. What exactly does that mean when we're talking about an adolescent?
Resilience is essentially the positive counterpart to vulnerability. It's usually defined by the presence of protective factors. These can be attributes within the individual like temperament or intelligence, or factors in their environment like a supportive family or a good school that promote healthy development despite facing adversity or risk.
So it's not about being invincible.
Not at all. That's a really important point. Resilience doesn't create some kind of super youth who's immune to all problems or excels in every single area. Success is often domain-specific.
Domain-specific, like,
Like a teen might show strong educational resilience, doing well in school despite chaos at home, but maybe struggle socially. Or they might have great social skills but behavioral challenges. Resilience can look different in different parts of their lives.
can you give an example of how that might play out? Like how difficulty in one area could trigger resilience in another?
Sure. Imagine a youth living in a neighborhood with a lot of street violence. That's a risk in their neighborhood microsystem. That very difficulty might act as a catalyst, pushing them to seek out support and safety in another microsystem, like their school. School then becomes a safe haven, a place they invest in and find success. That's resilience showing up in the school domain, partly because of risk elsewhere.
That makes sense. You also mentioned cumulative risk before.
Yes, and it's critical for understanding resilience too. The idea is that the accumulation of risk factors over time is usually much more damaging than any single risk factor on its own. Risks can act like a causal chain. Well, for example, maybe poor schooling leads to fewer opportunities, which increases stress, which might lead to negative peer associations, and so on. One risk makes the person more vulnerable to the next. Resilience factors are what can potentially break that chain.
And there are internal strengths that help break it.
Definitely. Organizations like the Search Institute have done great work identifying what they call internal assets. These are positive characteristics within the young person themselves. Things like having a commitment to learning, developing a positive sense of identity, having social competence, knowing how to make friends, navigate social situations, and holding positive values.
And we saw an incredible example of those internal assets with the Lost Boys of Sudan, didn't we?
Absolutely powerful example. Separated from their families by war, living in refugee camps for years. What helped them survive those extreme adversities? Their individual attributes were key. Their sociability, their willingness to share what little they had, their strong commitment to maintaining their reputation within their peer group, which really functioned as a kind of surrogate family for them. Those internal strengths were lifelines.
Wow. This really raises such an important question for all of us, doesn't it? Given how vital these protective factors, both internal and external, clearly are, how can we, consciously and deliberately try to cultivate them in the lives of the young people we know or interact with?
That's the core question, really.
What an incredibly extensive and often really surprising journey we've taken today.
Yeah.
Diving deep into all these facets of adolescent development, we've really seen this intricate dance, haven't we, between who the individual is and all these vast environmental contexts surrounding them. From those tiny microsystem interactions all the way out to the broad macrosystem forces, it just totally underscores the value of looking at that full ecological picture if we really want to understand and support young people.
Absolutely. And, that brings us to what really are the joys of working with adolescents. Despite all the complexities, all the challenges we've talked about, and they're real teenagers, are fundamentally in a state of growth. They're developing, they're on the brink of adulthood. It's actually a tremendously exciting time of life.
It is.
And remembering to use a strengths-based approach is so important. When we as adults approach teens with, as the book says, a tone of curiosity and interest, rather than just focusing on problems or deficits, it can genuinely change the whole nature of the interaction. It opens doors for real understanding, for connection, for support.
Yeah. So here's a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe mull over. Given this intricate web of influences we've explored today, all the way from those microscopic interactions up to macroscopic societal forces, how might a deeper understanding of these systems change the way you interact with the adolescents in your own life or in your community? How could it help you foster their unique path towards resilience and towards achievement?
Good question.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep nurturing that curiosity, keep learning.